Great, thank you. This following the lead of my people I've heard start meeting, I call the meeting of the Communications Committee to order. And to thank Sandy and Emily and the members of the committee for joining us. And we have a lot we hope we can accomplish today. Hopefully Seymour will be joining us shortly. So the first item on the agenda is to discuss the communications plan that Emily distributed to us in the last couple of days. Oh, Seymour's here, so let's just wait. This is a very prompt. We just started the meeting. Okay. So I want to thank Emily for putting together the communications plan. And why don't I turn it over to her to get started?
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and bring up the PowerPoint. Just give me one moment. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we'll just jump right in and get started. So when I first came on, my first big task was to come up with an agency-wide communications plan. And as I talked with Executive Director Berlin and with Commissioner Cardozo and others, immediately from the beginning, you know, we knew it had to be a more proactive kind of focus in the communications plan and tie everything together. So the process I used to develop the plan was meetings with senior staff to learn about what they do and what they thought was working well from a communication standpoint and some things that could be improved. And I also got input from commission members through conversations, through committee meetings, and through the commission meetings based on the feedback you gave then. I reviewed other state and federal agencies' websites and social media channels. And this was looking at like agencies that are other ethics and lobbying watchdog agencies, as well as just other state agencies that use the same web platform that we have. Marlena and I met with ITS and OGS to find out some of what they offered and the limitations with what they offered, so we could think about how best to use their services. And then I also used my past experience executing communications plans to help inform this plan. So the communications plan has several elements. The first is the communications plan goal. And then there's, oh, I'm sorry, that should say key audiences, not key messages. Key audiences that identified through talking with folks, objectives that we're going to achieve, our key messages that we want to get out there, the tactics that we'll use to achieve our goals and objectives, and then the annual calendar. So first we'll talk about the communications plan goal. And just keep in mind, this is just for the communications plan. This isn't the agency's overall goal. So to effectively communicate the commission's actions, priorities and policies to demonstrate how the commission is ensuring compliance with the state's ethics and lobbying laws and regulations with transparency and integrity to help restore public trust in government. And here's kind of our mapping of our key audiences. We have the regulated community, which includes all of the state government workforce. We have our lobbying arm, our lobbying firms, our in-house lobbyists, our nonprofit organizations that lobby. We have lobbying clients. We have state elected officials, and then candidates for statewide and legislative offices. Then under stakeholders, we have our good government groups. We have the law schools and colleges and university programs, the various bar associations, the Campaign Legal Center, and then I added faith-based organizations as can use them as a tool to reach out and spread the word of some things that we have going on when we're seeking public comment.
Emily, can I interrupt you right
Sure.
there? Reading this, don't want to blow it out of proportion, but you didn't list the New York State Bar Association. In all due respect to Seymour, I think it should be listed You did list.
I've noted it.
Sure, I had statewide bar associations, but I can put the New York State specifically. Yeah.
Just, given that I'm the chairman and you did list the bar association I used to head, I just think we should be even. I'll just say that with tongue in cheek. But it is important in particular because the State Bar Association has formed a special committee to deal with with ethics issues. So I just don't want to have them overlooked.
No, yeah, and I was referring to them in the statewide bar associations. I definitely did not overlook them, but I can certainly make them their own little box there. Not a problem at all. And then we have media, which includes reporters, statewide local news, as well as the LCA's, the Legislative Correspondents Association. Those are the reporters based here in Albany that represent papers across the states. And then editorial writers. Then we also have employees. And the general public, which would include our public commenters and people who request information from us.
Good.
So next I'll go into our objectives with the communications plan, and I made sure all of these were timely, so there's like an end date and that they can be measured. So the first one has to do with proactive communications, to significantly increase proactive communications on commission activities, priorities, policies, and guidance with the regulated community through e-newsletters, social media, and other communications starting by June 1st, 2023, and to be fully implemented by the end of the year. The second one has to do with education, and this is to educate the regulated communities on the laws and regulations they must abide by through training and proactive communications to begin by June 1st, 2023.
Emily, can I ask a question?
Sure.
With proactive communications. I mean, we do want to increase our communications with the regulated community, but don't we also want to include the public there?
Yeah, and as you can see, they are on our key audiences over here, the public, the general public. But there's other objectives that also we'll get to through them, but I can certainly add the public here if you want them specifically listed in objective one, not a problem at all.
Good. Go ahead.
So women might
No,
just
what?
to hold our comments till the end, would you prefer? Or could we into?
I think we should, Emma, if you tell us you disagree, I thought we should, since we all made notes, I assume, on reading this, would it be easier to hold our comment till the end, or should we interrupt you as we've been doing so far?
Whatever you prefer. I'm making notes as we go along as well, so whichever is we prefer.
Why don't we interrupt it, and then we'll still save some comments to the end? Okay.
Okay. Oh,
So Claudia wanted to add something.
sure, go ahead.
You want to go back?
I did-
Which slide?
no, stay where she is.
Right here?
I did have some questions. But you mentioned, well, thank you for doing it. I thought it was very well done.
Thank you.
Forward to hearing it from you now. So you mentioned that you managed to look at other websites and agencies to get a sense of best practices. When you say best practices, what were you looking for best practices in?
Sure. I was looking at their social media accounts. I was looking at how their website was organized and the information they had it there. I was looking at what their newsletters look like to see if they even had newsletters. I was looking at how people could access their data and how they organize their data on the website. So really just kind of exploring, how they communicated with their publics as a whole from their social media accounts and from their website. So if they had newsletters, I took a look at them. Like another one that I looked at was the New York City Conflicts of Interest Board, who's really creative and has some really talented, funny, I would say, writers on their staff, and they take a unique spin to some things. So whatever I could find on their websites, I was taking a look. And one thing I meant to say at the start is that as we develop these tools that I'll be talking about, we will again be going back and revisiting what other organizations have done and getting ideas from them. And we'll be continually assessing to see if things are working or if they need to be tweaked. So this is a very fluid document that I expect to change as we get out there and get reactions and get feedback from folks.
I was thinking in terms of like technology, in terms of how, did you get a chance to get a feel for the kind of technologies that they use to communicate with the public? Like, for example, you know, as a commissioner, I struggle with the technology that we use to communicate with one another as well as the public. And so my question is to you, when you were looking at best practices, did you look at the kind of technologies they use, other entities use to communicate with the public? And if you did, where does our technology stand in comparison?
Yeah, sure. Actually, this is going to be explored a little bit later on. So if I could just pause on answering that question, because it is its own part a little bit ahead. But yes, that is something that I did look at.
Okay. Right? Why don't you continue, Emily?
Okay, sure. Okay, so I think we're up to number 3. And this one is accessible data, and that's to make information and data on the website more accessible and user-friendly to the public by end of 2023. And keep in mind, this is using the platforms that we have available to us now, right? We know that as Executive Director Berlind has discussed, we are going to be contracting with an IT consultant to look at our specific databases and how to make them better and enhance them. So this is really to be looking at the information that's already on our website and how we can make that more accessible and user-friendly. So I just want to clarify that. Then we have media engagement, which is to engage media regularly about the Commission's actions and data resources based on the Commission's calendar throughout 2023. Stakeholder engagement, and this is to implement a symbiotic stakeholder relationship strategy that is two-way in nature with at least 6 interactions per year by April of 2024. So this is meant to have a conversations with our stakeholders to find out, get feedback from them, what is working, what is not working, how we can improve things, so we can hear from them. Employee engagement is, oh, sorry.
I'd like to check on stakeholder engagement.
Mhm.
I certainly agree with it. I think it's not realistic to assume that we're going to be meeting with each of the groups you listed on the previous page 6 times a year. If that's what
That's not what I intend by that, for sure. I mean, like 6 stakeholder interactions, like, for instance, later in the plan, I proposed doing a roundtable with the people who commented during the public hearing. So that would be 1. Then you'll see that I propose quarterly meetings with stakeholders, right? So those would be 4 interactions per year. And then we have our public hearing. So that's the...
recognize that they're stakeholders and they're stakeholders, and some have a broader base, if you will.
Yes. So it doesn't necessarily mean all stakeholders. It means, you know, what is appropriate for that type of interaction. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So then employee engagement, and this is to develop a plan to engage employees about Commission actions by October 1st, 2023, to boost morale and demonstrate they are valued, and to break down silos among divisions. So this one I would be doing in partnership, of course, with Mariana, who's our Director of Administration. So, and Sandy as well. And our goal there is to develop the plan. We haven't actually developed one just yet. Number 7 is the legislative agenda, to develop an annual process to formulate the Commission's legislative agenda that is ready to be implemented by January 1st, 2024. So the goal here is to coalesce around what the priorities are for the legislative agenda and have them ready to go, you know, by the end of December, and then a plan on how to engage with the legislature to try to get our initiatives before them when the session starts.
And would you assume that that would include those subsequent interactions with the legislature, depending on what the particular issue is? It's not just writing a letter saying, please implement, this. The politics are obviously behind the scenes or openly talking to legislators, right?
Right, yes, exactly. And so once we know what the priorities are, then we can determine what are the most appropriate next steps to try to advance those. And it could be, and I talk about this more later in the presentation, but seeing if there's stakeholders who potentially like statewide elected officials who are agree with us and on the same page, and then meeting with the appropriate legislators, the chairs of committees, et cetera, that oversee those areas.
Good.
Was there another question?
I like the objectives that you laid out, and and there are several of them I can see criteria you're using to determine completely, when it's complete. Because, for example, when you say that, the goal is to prepare something or to create something, but there are a few that I'm looking at that don't seem to have a way of understanding when it's accomplished. So when you say to make information data available, is that
I'm sorry, you're cutting out a little bit. I just heard to make information and data available.
okay, you say to engage media regularly. Does that mean you're going to,
So we're going to get to all that when we get to the tactics. So you'll understand what we mean by that. And it's also in the calendar. So these are just the broad things, the step-by-step come out in the tactics.
I'm just suggesting that, as you've done in most of your cases, that when you give me the objectives, you lay out specifically what they are so that I can know, and what they look like when they are achieved, when they're finalized. And,
Sure,
and
I can add more details to that.
I just don't see it on all of them.
Good.
Okay.
Go ahead, Emily.
Okay, so our last objective is transparency, and that's to complete commission tasks with transparency and integrity and in a timely manner starting April 1st, 2023. And I know we've already begun this work and it's going to be ongoing, but I didn't want to, leave it off. It's an ongoing thing. So I thought it was a very important objective. And I know this one, it doesn't have a specific end time, and it shouldn't, because this is going to be an ongoing kind of thing that the commission is going to be doing and the staff's going to be doing going ahead.
And later on, you'll have, in this document, there'll be examples of what this is.
Okay, so next we have our key messages. And again, these will be fluid. So these are where we are right now, but these are going to change as we have more accomplishments. For example, we talked about some accomplishments and things we'll be doing in the Capitol Press Room interview. So these will change, but these are kind of like our main overarching key messages at this point. So the first one is since its inception in July 2022, the Commission on Ethics in Lobbying and Government has avidly embraced its watchdog role to oversee ethics and lobbying in New York State. The second one, and a lot of this gets to too about explaining who we are as a commission, because I think that's something that I've heard is that a lot of people don't know who we are and what we do. So these kind of overarching key messages help explain that. So the commission administers, enforces, and interprets New York State's ethics and lobbying laws. Number 3, the commission is steadfast in its commitment to restoring the public's trust in state government by leading with integrity and transparency. Number 4, a new day has dawned in how we approach ethics and lobbying regulation in New York State. The commission is examining how it can effectively carry out its duties with integrity, trust, and transparency. And finally, the commission and staff are hard at work improving the efficiency, efficacy, and effectiveness of our policies and procedures and the transparency of our operations. And then again, the commission is steadfast in its commitment to restoring the public's trust in state government by leading with integrity and transparency. Again, there'll be additional key messages depending on what it is that we're communicating that day. So now we're getting into tactics, which I think some of you are very eager to talk about. And I've broken them down into 5 areas: communications tools, stakeholder relations, legislative agenda and outreach, media relations, and information requests. So here's our communications tools, and these are, what I'm envisioning now, but it could be expanded upon, as we go forward and see more opportunities. And one thing I do want to note about all of the tactics is that each communications tactic is tied back to achieving one or more objectives that was noted earlier in the presentation. So that's how you can see the connection between, okay, what objective is this helping us achieve? Which is in the plan. It's not in the presentation, but it is in the plan that you have. So the first one is to create a common branding that is integrated with a common logo that gives a sense of what the commission does and what it values. So we have worked on this, and it's on the agenda, I think, as some of you may already know, for the next commission meeting. And all commission communications should have the same look and feel, using the same colors. And they would have the logo or some variation of it on it. So whenever somebody gets a communication from us, they will know that it's coming from COLIG. The second tool I have is developing an agency mission statement. So the commission should develop a mission statement that communicates the purpose of the commission and its values. Many organizations have a mission statement, and that's kind of their guiding principle and purpose. So, and that's something I think might be appropriate for the work of this committee to work on. That would really just let people know this is what we're here to do, and this is how we plan on doing it with the principles in mind. Next is social media. To use social media as a more proactive means to get our word out to our stakeholders and our audiences on a timely basis. Initially, I'm thinking we would do Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and we would develop various different types of campaigns. So one type of campaign is called an evergreen campaign, and those are things that can go out anytime, right? So like if someone writes in with a question that we're like, oh, we're getting a lot of questions on this topic, we could have a Dear COLIG campaign, right? Where we respond to that question and just put a little tidbit out there. There's also things called breaking news campaigns. So if we're putting out a news release, if we just issued guidance, if the commission, adopts a new resolution, these types of things, we could just let social media know as it happens, this is what happened today. Then we have reminders. There's a lot of filing dates, whether you're filing a financial disclosure statement or you are a lobbyist or a client and you have filings for that. And so those would be reminders to file for those deadlines. In addition, we have things that go out for public comment often. So we want to promote on social media, hey, this draft regulation is out for public comment. A reminder to get in your comment by tomorrow if you want to comment on this. And then we have something what I called limited time campaigns. So, this is like around the holidays, doing a campaign about the gift rules, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable about accepting gifts. Or, I want to do a campaign where we introduce each new commission member, right? So people get to know you. And once we get through all of you, that campaign would be over for that time period. So that's a limited time campaign. And then also highlighting different divisions of the agency and employees in it so people know who we are and what we do. And once we get all this up and running, we'll be able to use social media analytics to find out which of the posts are most popular and how they're doing. Is there any? Yes, go ahead. I was just about to ask, are there any questions on that? I had a feeling there would be.
Thank you. So, social media, are we going to have I guess you would be managing the social media posts, right?
Yep. So what I plan to do for that is what we do is we would have a social media calendar. So we'd have a yearly one that has like kind of the big topics that happen, like when are the FDS reminders, when are the lobbying reminders, when is the gift season, when is it law day, right? And then we break that down into what would be weekly social media calendar, which is like the actual written words of what every post would be with the graphics, so that we would know every week exactly what we're posting on which day.
And will we have a policy or something about our posts, the commissioners posting or other staff posting on social media?
So, I think that's really not up for me to decide. I think that's something for all of you to consider. I would say at my other organizations, as individuals, people can post, what they want to post as long as they're, like on mine, I say my opinions are my own. So I'm not, on my social media, I'm not representing the commission, right? I do use it frequently to promote commission things by retweeting or something, but if I say that dog is really cute, that's my opinion. That's not the commission's opinion, right? So I think there's disclaimers like that can be used, but for the commissions, and same with commissioners, right? If it's your personal opinion, you're not speaking on behalf of the whole commission at that point, unless it's a stated policy by the whole commission. So that's the way I've kind of seen it used in the past. But it's up to, all of you to discuss whether or not there should be a more formal policy.
I do think we would have to have a discussion. We just want individual commissioners to be posting, the danger of reflecting. I mean, sometimes differences of opinion, that's healthy, but I don't think we should just have, leave it open that any commissioner could post and say, I think X is or Y. I would think we
Yeah, that's
need to have
what
a
we need,
developing policy.
like a guidelines,
Right.
something to.
And it really relates to some other issues that I think we should deal with how do individual commissioners communicate more generally, or should they, and input total prohibitions on it, but we have to be very careful that we present, where appropriate, a coordinated response.
I was listening to Dolly, I thought she was getting at the idea of having exposure on these various technologies, I guess you call them, from the commission as a whole. In other words, is there a message from the commission or
Right,
Yes.
as a whole, not as individuals?
that's
Should we have a presence on this site as well, speaking from that collective voice?
That's our presence, right? You would be.
That's what this is. This would be commission as a whole's, social media channel, right? So if we put out a news release, we'll share that on there, right? And then each individual commission member should feel free to share that or retweet it or whatever on their own personal, right? Because you're just sharing the news of the organization. But yes, this is the commission's as a whole social media channel. So it's going to be communicating our activities, our guidance, the actions that you take, like, hey, upcoming meeting of the commission, you can watch live here, that type of thing. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
So that the community could respond or communicate with us through these meetings.
Yes. So comments will be turned on. That's a best practice that in social media, and there will be debate, there will be dialogue that goes on in the comments, and the best practice is that you leave them there and let the community kind of take care of itself, unless there's profanity, unless it's vulgar, unless it's personally attacking somebody. There's different types of things that would come into play when you're monitoring it. But if someone says, I don't agree with that policy, that would stay. And then someone else normally would say, no, we need this policy, and it's a forum for active dialogue and communication. And that would all be like down in the comments. It's not like it's right up on our page. You'd have to click into the post, scroll down and look at the comments to see that.
Good.
Okay. All right, moving on to topical one-pagers. So the purpose of these would be to create one-pagers. Our website right now has a lot of great information, and the idea would be to take this one-pager to create it to be like at the top of our lobbying page. Like, what are the most frequently asked questions about lobbying, and what do people need to know? And put it quick, simple on one page, and have links to where they can find out more information on that specific topic. So it's kind of like a gateway for people to have to get a quick answer, and then if they need more details on something, they can get into that. And the idea would be that this would be the first item posted on each section of our website. We could link to it in social media, and then we would also provide it to agency ethics officers, human resource individuals, and general counsels so that they could share these ideas with current and new employees so that they know their responsibilities, as working as a state employee.
Good.
Next is the quarterly newsletter. So we're proposing to create a quarterly newsletter that would include information from across the agency to be targeted to the regulated community, state employees, and stakeholders. So, and it would be some regular columns, like I imagined there'd be a piece that's like a Dear Colleague piece that we would have. People really like scenarios in the training so that they can say, oh, you're presented with these set of facts. Is this person or not allowed to do this? To kind of inform them with a real life example. We'll do profiles of the new commissioners. We'll do profiles of employees. And then we can also highlight the news releases and data from COLEG as well as the relevant reminders. And then we'll always have like a standing reported tip box so people know that if they see something, they can report it to us, and that information is always readily available. Next, we'll go to the user-friendly website. Like I said, our website does have a lot of great information. A lot of it is simplified, but I want to reorganize it so that the most access pages, so the pages that people go to most often are available right from our homepage at a touch of a button, so that they don't have to try to go through 3 menus to get to that. And so with Google Analytics, you can find out which are the most accessed pages and do that pretty easily. So that's like one of the first things we want to do. And then now that I've been given, I said, the keys to the castle because I took my web training earlier this week. So now I can actually go in and edit the website. I'll be looking at, the structure and how things are organized to see, does this make sense here? Would it make more sense here? Working with Marlena and the great job that she's already done with the website, just to kind of refine it a little bit more now that we'll be having more staff who will have time to do that.
And Emily, I understand that, I guess before you joined us, that Liz Benjamin had a meeting with some media to try to explain how our existing website worked.
Yeah, that was actually Marlena and Carol Quinn who had that meeting and took them through the public search query. So went through how to find all the lobbying information. And you'll see that's going to be noted on a couple pages ahead.
Great.
Okay, so next is the annual report. And the annual report's coming up quick. So I will just caveat this by saying I'm going to incorporate as much of this as I can in this annual report, realizing I'm not fully staffed. But, for the next one, after this one is when I think all of this would be fully incorporated. But taking the annual report, which has a ton of data and a ton of information in it, and making it a little bit more user-friendly with, so that now we have a lot of charts, right? I want to create some infographics and have like a by the numbers intro page to every section so people can get fast facts just by a glance without having to read through the whole report. And then also, there's a lot of great information in there in text, but kind of break up the text, use call out boxes to highlight the really important points. So it'll draw people's eye to the important points without making them read through the whole document if they don't have time to do that. So those are just some things that I'm thinking about with that. And then look at the possibility of doing a news release with some of those fast facts 6 months later when we get the next semi-annuals in and have that data so that people don't have to wait a whole year. We can give them an update on the 6-month interim. Next is rollout plans. So this is something I've used throughout my whole career. And this is whenever there's a significant announcement or action that's going to be happening, thinking about who should know this, who should we get this word out to, and when are we going to do it and how are we going to do it, right? So if the commission takes a significant action, is it going out in a news release? Are we putting it in our newsletter? Are we making sure our legislative community has the news release so that they know that you took this action? Are we setting up interviews to promote whatever it is that the commission did to make sure it gets out to the broader public? So just really coming up with a plan for specific announcements or initiatives that are happening timely. Next, one vehicle for doing that is a news release, right? So doing news releases that are highlighting commission activities and agency activities. So you've been seeing, we've been doing the news releases when the chair and the vice chair were appointed. We're doing the news releases on the staff hires. I'm planning a news release when we release the annual report, so folks know it's there. But we also could do like high profile settlements or decisions, you know, that the commission takes action on. And then there's also things like if it's a lesser settlement or not, I don't want to say lesser, but not as high profile, right? It's some worker out in Western New York we have a settlement with, and it's posted on our website. So doing a heads up email or outreach to the media in that part of the state, because they would be interested in that, where maybe the media in the capital region wouldn't. So a news release statewide isn't appropriate, but it is newsworthy, and folks in that area, in that region, would want to know about it. So just doing like a heads up email saying, hey, this decision was posted on our website, or the settlement was posted on our website. You can find it here. Thought you might be interested. News conferences. I would like to start doing news conferences with the chair and or executive director for our major announcements. And these could actually be done via WebEx, and that allows reporters statewide to attend rather than just having like a stand-up news conference here in Albany where only local media could come. And we used these when I was at the education department, and they were pretty successful. You get to do your presentation, and then you have some Q&A. So just looking at opportunities when we could hold some news conferences. And then continuing with the op-eds, I know there was an op-ed by the chair, and looking for opportunities again to do more op-eds from the chair or executive director. Again, like when the annual report is out, this is something that would be in the rollout plan, right? We'll just do an op-ed. We'll figure out which paper is best, which one we haven't been in before, and do an op-ed highlighting what was found in and why it's important, right? Next, we have videos, and this is something I want to explore. I don't know that we have the full means to do it at this point, but I really want to consider using tutorial videos on how to use the PSQ, how to file your FDS. And this is something that could be done inexpensively by like recording a staff training, right? And then it could just be up there. But there's also vendors out there who can make these like a little bit more fun and a little bit more engaging, where it wouldn't just be staff, it would be like they use animation to do it. So, you know, but of course that would take a budget. So, you know, exploring these things, this isn't anything that's set in stone at this point, but exploring opportunities for that. Next, I'd like to start using surveys just to get a check on, you know, where we are today and how all of our communication helps improve where we are in surveys, right? So get surveys from our regulated community and other stakeholders, basically on the overall customer service kind of experience in terms of communications, and then that could be the benchmark, and then in the future repeating it and see if we've moved the needle through our communications. So constant contact, and this gets to the question earlier about technologies. So right now we use GovDelivery to get out all of our communications, whether it be, or staff do it internally through their email. So that is, you know, like when the FDS filers get the notice that they have to file their FDS, when the lobbyists get the notification that it's time to put in their bi-monthly, when there's just general e-blasts that go out to our different communities. So I'm looking into moving away from GovDelivery from most of our communications, because there's some severe limitations with that platform that we've discovered. And it's much more expensive than other platforms. So one of them we're looking at, and I'm going to explore, Sandy asked me to explore some other ones, so I'm going to do that too. But the one I've looked into so far is Constant Contact, which I'm familiar with and I've used. And it's an email newsletter where you can create, you know, various articles with very short kind of paragraph or two information, and then link so that they can get more information. And it's a way to, it seamlessly works to get emails out, get them out on social media, and get them archived and on our website all at the same time within like one action. And it lets people unsubscribe, and it's just, it'll bring the process into us so that we don't have to rely on ITS, like to get it, like right now we have to rely on them to get out our Gov delivery contacts. We could do it in-house and me and my staff could do it. So if we needed like a quick reminder of something, we could get it out, and turn it around in-house. So this is something that we're going to be exploring and using. We could have different like branded templates. So for the e-blasts that go out, it would have one template, so they know it's an e-blast. For the newsletters, this is how the newsletters would go out so that it would be branded. They know, oh, this is a COLAG newsletter. Any questions on that?
We're all with you.
All right. So that was communications tools. Let me move my screen here. There we go. So next is stakeholder relations. And the first one I kind of mentioned, and that was to hold a roundtable with invited stakeholders who testified or submitted written comments to follow up on the public hearing. In this, what I like about this format is, and I think we heard this coming out of the public hearing, this would allow each of you as commissioners to have a dialogue and ask questions. So you could really, ask those follow-up questions of the commenters that we're interested in hearing more from and have that dialogue, which the public hearing format doesn't really lend itself to. And this would be open to the public and it'd be live streamed on our website, but just so that we could get a deeper dive and hear the ideas of the stakeholders. And then you could also follow up with your questions and ask questions. So that's what I was envisioning, as a follow-up to the public hearing and what we heard there.
Emily, do you think, though, it should just be limited to the people who spoke at the public hearing, as distinct from other people who may have expressed interest on some of these subjects, perhaps didn't show up at the public meeting, but issued a...
I think we can invite whoever we want. It's our roundtable. So we could look at the
I
list.
guess would not be limited, not
Yeah.
necessarily limited to the people who spoke at the hearing.
Yeah, I'll add that. Yep, I'll add that. Just making a note. That's a good point. The other thing I wanted to mention is outreach to commenters, to people who commented at the public hearing and who might have had some misconceptions about the commission and what it does or what the rules are. But there were a couple of those, and I know staff has been reaching out to them to try to get so that they have a better understanding of what the actual rules are and requirements, so that we don't leave that misconception out there. And then quarterly meetings, like I mentioned earlier, to establish regular communications with stakeholders and staff to discuss what is and what is not working with the agency's policies, procedures, and to identify common areas of concern and discuss potential solutions. And these could be done by WebEx or in person. And and if it's not needed, like quarterly, we could scale it back. But there seems like times of the year, like when we're developing our legislative agenda, where it might make sense to hear from stakeholders and what's on their mind and what are they thinking on certain issues that might help inform what we're doing.
Well, I just, the way this is phrased, it gives me some concern. Certainly, many of the stakeholders have been very constructive, but if some stakeholders ultimately appear to not offering constructive comments at all, and then we don't invite them 4 times a year to such a meeting, we may be subject to criticism. So I would think that perhaps we simply want to say periodic meetings with stakeholders rather than quarterly, because some people come immediately to mind who might find us abusing that point.
Sure. Yep. And then last is stakeholder presentations. So accept invitations and seek out opportunities to present to stakeholder audiences at annual conferences, scheduled meetings, or other means. And I know folks do this with the State Bar Association, with the local Bar Association, the New York State Association of Counties. Another opportunity that we're going to be doing is a city and state forum for nonprofits. Carol's going to be presenting there on their lobbying requirements. So just looking for and accepting those opportunities as another way to get out our guidance. So now we'll move on to the legislative agenda and outreach. And this is really just basically
Part of the point, given the practicalities of meetings, I don't want to, not sure this should suggest that every commissioner shall have to be at every one of these quarterly meetings.
No, definitely not. And I think the intent actually is for staff to first kind of get
See.
ideas from them and have a dialogue. And then, from that, we develop, action items based on that. That would then, be discussed with the commission. Yep. Okay, so legislative agenda and outreach. And I just want to let you know, I took that picture yesterday. So when you guys come up for the commission meeting, if you want to go by to the Capitol, the tulips are blooming and look really nice right now. So first, the legislative agenda, and we talked about this before, developing an agenda each year that the staff and commissioners would begin discussing for the next year's priorities. And I put down in September, that can be a little fluid, and then have it finalized by December. So we are ready to go with our strategy and our priorities January 1. And then once that agenda is finalized, we do the outreach, right? So we develop an outreach strategy to meet with the relevant committee chairs and form legislative leadership of the commission's legislative priorities for that year. And then we consider like who are other groups or individuals that might be in agreement and support our proposals. And then, if we can advocate together, it's a stronger position that the legislation is, or whatever the proposal is warranted. So again, and this could be, we would put this information in our newsletter. We could do a news release, like this is our legislative agenda to get the word out, that is the priorities of the commission for that year. Any questions on that? Okay, moving on to media relations. I'm going to skip over the first two because they're news releases and news conferences, and we already covered it, but I didn't feel like I could not have it in the media relations section. So I put them there. And then training sessions. So this is what you were referring to that Carol and Marlena did for the reporters. So I'm suggesting that we do this annually in January, because that's when the session gets underway. That's when reporters start paying attention to what's going on with the lobbying world. And there's a lot of turnover in the state capitol and who covers what's happening in Albany. So it makes sense. And also just a reminder for those who have had it before, if they need a little refresher. Responses to inquiries. So our approach is going to be to respond to reporter inquiries in a timely and accurate fashion, and to correct any inaccuracies in reporting as soon as possible. So if a story pops up and I'm like, wait, that's not accurate, I'll give that reporter a call or shoot them an email and say, hey, that's not quite right. Could you please update your story? Here's what it actually is accurate. And usually reporters are really good about that when you do that. And the other thing I want to do is be more, instead of just saying no comment, because there are several instances where we cannot comment by law, right? But I want to explain a little bit more than that. So this commission is, committed to transparency. We want to do that. However, in this instance, we are prevented by law from commenting on this matter because of XYZ law. Right? So that reporters have a full understanding. We're just not like, hey, no comment. Like there's a reason, right? Like we are as transparent as the law lets us be. So just explaining that a little bit more, and then keeping those standard responses in a place so that, we have them to refer back to easily and we can get back to reporters right away rather than making them wait like a day for us to say, hey, we can't answer that question. Next is interviews, and that is to have the chair and executive director. Oh, sure. Go ahead.
This may not be the place, but it also raises the question of who is going to answer all the media inquiries. Assume it's 99% you, but should we talk about when it's Sandy, when it's Fred, when it's individual commissioners? Is that something that belongs either here or somewhere in this document?
So like when we're talking about interviews, right? So that would be Chair Davey or Executive Director Berlind, right? So they just were on Capitol Press Room this week. I emailed you the
Yes,
link
I saw that.
earlier. Like, so when it's an interview, I think it's more appropriate for the chair and for the executive director to be doing those for sure. But like when it's a routine kind of inquiry, it's more appropriate for me to be doing it. I don't think, the chair and Sandy need to be having their time with that. But definitely, certainly for interviews, I think that's when we would prioritize having the chair and executive director. If we are coming out with like a statement on something that the commission feels really strongly about, right? And we want to take a position, then we might send out the statement from the chair or the executive director, we can talk about it at that time, but, I'm always kind of the entry point, right? So inquiries should come into me in my office, and then, it's not like I respond to them in a vacuum. They're discussed with Sandy and staff, and then we can say, if I think, wow, this is like something that the commission has really been like gung ho on, like this statement should come from you or from Chair Davey, or maybe we should, explore an interview on this. Those are the types of things that I think would be more appropriate.
But on the other side, I think we would say most, if not all of the time, they should not be coming from just an individual commissioner. That's just think from Fred, for example. I mean, there's issues there that we may have to be aware of, especially if there was a difference of opinion on a particular issue.
Correct. And so those would have to be on a case-by-case basis, because like me as a spokesperson, I'm talking on behalf of the agency and commission as a whole, right? So, if there's still discussion on an issue and, then we could say, like my statement would be, yes, the commission is discussing this and, debating both sides or, exploring all sides of it, and they have not yet reached a conclusion, right? We can say that, that's fine to say. But once it becomes, like the commission policy, or they take a definitive action, then I would say the commission, discussed it and came to this decision, and this is how we're moving forward. But I think all bodies have some back and forth, right? Debate, that's how democracy works. And, I think that's to be expected, and you could just say that, the commission is discussing it, that they're exploring, all sides of the issue to make a decision. So interviews. So having Chair Davey and the executive director participate in regular timely interviews with reporters. When we have a big announcement, like I'm thinking when we do the annual report, we'll come up with our talking points, and we'll want to get out there and talk about it, because this is what we do. This is what we do every year. This is like our big culmination of what was done the previous year, right? So let's get out there and talk about it. Let's, we were just on Capitol Press Room. Let's go on there again. Let's talk about Capitol tonight. Let's get on these other programs that have a statewide reach. So we really get a bang for the buck, and it's a good use of the chair and Sandy's time, so that, the statewide programs have a little bit more reach. So just exploring more of those opportunities, which would be in the rollout plans, when we have announcements. And then finally, editorial board meetings. I cannot state how important it is to meet with editorial boards at least once a year to communicate what our actions are, what our priorities are, and what our policies are, and why they're important, and to really develop that relationship with editorial writers. A lot of times when you develop that relationship, when they're trying to form their opinion about something, they might call you and ask you, like, so what do you think about this? What's the commission's position about this? And again, this is a time when I would put, I would ask, the executive director or the chair to talk with an editorial board, like to explain our positions about things, so that you're helping inform, making sure the editorial writer is fully informed, and knows all sides of an issue before coming down where they want, because they're always a call to action, right? This thing should happen. So we can help influence that by letting them know where we are on things.
I was interested in the editorial boards that you listed, that you didn't list the New York Times, which, the way I grew up, that was the one you would always look to. Was there a reason for that, or?
There is. In my experience, the New York Times typically only speaks to you when they want to call you, right? So it's not like they're not on our list, and it's not like they're not getting our information. But we'd have to have something really big to go in there with to want to talk to them. Because keep in mind, they write on everything from New York City to international. So, like when fracking was a big thing here, we talked to the editorial board about fracking because it was the most controversial issue in the state, right? And there was a couple things in education where they called, but you call and ask them for a meeting and they might not take it. So that's why I did not put them on there. I put ones on there that I thought we would get more bang for our buck, and who I know write about our issues more, like the state issues where we're at as a state workforce and as a state agency. So those are the ones that I put on first, because you also have to prioritize, right? You can't meet with all 10 editorial boards in one year. So these are the ones that I prioritized for this year. We can look at others next year. And also, so if there's an editorial board that's writing a lot about you and you haven't met with them, definitely go in and meet them. I remember I had one principal who the Watertown Daily Times was writing about him like at least once or twice a month. And I said, you got to go meet with them. They think you're like this big bureaucracy. You got to go meet with them and give them like a face, like that you're a person. And it totally changed the coverage. So, you know, if they're writing about us, that will definitely say, yeah, let's go meet with them and give us priority. So these are the ones that I think would be most in tune to our issues.
Fine.
Okay. And next is information requests and inquiries. And kind of our guiding philosophy in all of these is that the information request should be fulfilled in as timely a manner as possible and within the requirements outlined in law and regulation. And we are working on, you know, FOIL's new to this agency, so we're going to be working on the policies and procedures now that we have the regs. Like, how does that get implemented in the organization, right? So who's taking that, who's responding to it, who's filtering it out to the agency to find out what materials are responsive, who's reviewing it, and then getting it out to the requester. So we'll be working internally on that process to make sure that we're meeting all of those deadlines. And then same with information requests. Again, it's just like an internal process thing. Like if you get a call from the general public, who's responding to them, if you're getting a call from the regulated community, who's responding to them, and just making sure we're doing it in a timely manner.
Good. And if we have time, as you know, we're going to meet with Michael Sand at the end of this meeting to talk about it.
Yes. Yep. And then the communications annual calendar. I won't go through all of that with you now, but I just, you know, trying to plan out our year, right? So we know what our workflow is. We know what the big dates are that we need to hit. And this really feeds kind of everything. So like we can identify what things are coming up, what deserves a news release, what deserves a heads up to a reporter, what deserves a newsletter mention. Maybe something comes up and we want to do like just an email blast to our regulated community, but just, you know, keeping in mind when we like when's the newsletter going to go out? When are the biannuals due? That type of things are coming up. And of course, and here's when the commission meetings are, all of that and all the work associated with the commission meetings. So just kind of planning it out for the year. So now if I haven't exhausted your questions, I'm happy to answer more.
Right?
Jimmy, yes, thank you. Early on, you talked about stakeholders you want to reach out to. And I just wanted to know, how do you plan to incorporate people with physical challenges like blindness, deafness, people who don't speak English or not having English as their first language?
Yeah, sure. So our website actually has a great feature where you can translate it into, it's 12 or more languages. So anything on the website, you can hit a button and it'll be translated. So people can do that. I don't know, Sandy, do you know? I know some state agencies have a service, like if someone calls in and English isn't their first language, they can say that, and then there's a number that's called that gets a translator on the line. Do we have that service? I'm not sure if we do.
I don't believe we currently have that service. It's something we're looking at.
Okay. So there's that. Then, so with the blindness and deaf community, there's things with the website that make those more accessible for like text readers, right? So that if somebody, it's all done like in the background in the coding, so that if someone has a text reader, like it will read the website to them. And we keep all that in mind when we're putting things on the website to make sure that if we're putting it on this way, it's going to be accessible. So there's precautions that we take to make sure the information is accessible in that way.
So would it make sense for you to include that in this plan?
Sure, I can add that. Sure.
Early on with your goals, and I want to follow up on what see if I had mentioned. That is, you have one major goal, I'm not reading it now, but the fact that we are so committed to transparency with the public, as opposed to that being that part of it being part of the one goal, it's be separated out as two major goals, one of which is our relationship with the public.
So right now, there typically with communications plans, you have one goal, right? One overarching goal, and then you have objectives that support that goal. So I did make it its own objective. So I can share my screen again. And so that you could, hold on, wait. Let's do this first. So I made it its own objective, just transparency. So people would know that that is, oh, now it went to the wrong page. That is an important objective for the agency. And it is mentioned in the overall goal, but typically communications plans have one goal, and then that's supported by objectives that you will achieve to achieve that goal.
Any other comments from Seymour or Doug? You have made a couple of times allusions to technology issues and may not be quite in the communications plan. But do you think you're going to be hampered by lack of sufficient, and I know we're trying to expand our technology capabilities, but is that going to be a problem for you think?
So I developed this communications plan based on the technology we have now, with the one modification of the e-newsletter that I want to bring on board. So for instance, like there's limitations to the website. Like sometimes you have a website that has like a sidebar that says like, how do I file an FDS, find lobbying information? Our website does not have that technology. Like it's just not in the platform's capability to do that. So there's very few things in this plan that require technology enhancements. The one thing I will say is the e-newsletter, but that's a cost-effective one, right? It's not an add-on to our budget. It should overall be a net savings there. And as we go forward and have more capabilities, of course, we will take advantage of them and update things and adapt. But I definitely did this with this is the reality of where we are now and things I can accomplish now. And like I said, this will be fluid, right? So as the education training platform gets built out, we will incorporate that into it for sure. But this is based on what's available to me now.
And we'd be interested, I think you have 2 staff vacancies that you're trying to fill now. Is that
They are filled. The communications assistant starts on May 2nd, and we are just waiting for the budget division to approve the assistant director position, and then hopefully they'll start in May as well.
great? And I think that we should probably report at the upcoming meeting that we have, let's talk about it, review the communications plan that Emily has proposed, made a couple of minor changes. But interested in Sandy's point, should we formally approve this plan? It's a matter of the way the commission operates.
I think there should be a presentation. We don't currently have it on the agenda because the committee hadn't met, obviously, and maybe we can have it on for the next meeting, May meeting.
For the May meeting.
And we can schedule a formal presentation for the entire.
Give them a chance to make the applications.
Yeah, so maybe if you wanted to then, Emily, just make a couple of the NITS additions that were discussed, and we could, at the upcoming meeting, say we had a meeting and we'll be presenting a more formal proposal for adoption at the May meeting. Does that sound like a? I do want to say, how long have you been working now for us? 2 months?
5 weeks.
I personally think this is extraordinary, and I really commend you for what you've done in a very, very short time. And
Thank you so much.
Here, I want to echo Commissioner Cardozo's comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I would add from the staff perspective that Emily has come in and has whipped us all into shape from a communications perspective. It's been terrific. It's really done a phenomenal, thorough job across the board.
Thank you very, very much. And I do hope, subject to your schedule, that you can stay with us on the rest of
Oh, yeah,
meeting.
I plan on sitting in, yep.
Okay. So anything more on the communications committee, on the Emily's statement and proposal before we move to the next item on the agenda?
I have one question, comment kind of thing. Talking about the web platform and our website, you know, you gave us a lot of different examples. Most of them are New York State, and then you gave us the Hawaii one, which is, you know, just completely different. So I'm just wondering, are we bound by the New York State? Is platform for the web page or the website?
We are bound by that, but you know, it's funny you mentioned Hawaii, because the one thing I loved about the Hawaii one is it had that page with all the tiles, right? And we can
Yes.
do that. We can do that. So that is one of my plans of like, that's how you're gonna find the most commonly accessed pages right there. So it's funny you mentioned that one, but yeah,
And we
Hawaii.
could do the color and we could do it maybe.
You know, and it's so funny because when you dive into the Hawaii one, because I did look at the report of the 10, what was it, Sandy? The 10 transparency practices of ethics agencies or something. And
CLC.
that's
Yep.
Hawaii was on that one. But when you go deeper into the website, they do lose their color coding. I was like, where'd that color coding go?
Okay.
But so we are bound by our colors in that we are assigned specific colors, which you will see in our new logo unveiling on Tuesday, that there's certain
It's gonna
colors
add-
that we have to work with. But there is other ways I think that we can say, like in the way it's organized and how it's highlighted, that these things belong together. This is a grouping, right? And that's essentially what the colors should do. So we'll definitely be looking into that.
Anything else on this subject before we move on? Okay. So now that we've solved these problems, now all we have to do is talk about the public meeting. And I just thought while it's very fresh in our mind that we should talk about this, both short-term and long-term. And I think Emily's presentation highlights, you know, our goal to keep the public as advised as possible. But there were a number of suggestions made by some of the participants, which I've tried to list in the agenda here. So what is it, if anything, that we should do with respect to this meeting, follow up on this meeting before we talk about planning the next meeting? You know, should we be writing a letter of thank you? Should we be calling individual people who presented things? And should we have another meeting this year, in 6 months, for example? And should we ask other committees to respond to some of the substantive suggestions? I just throw that out for questions, you know, what your reaction is to what I've listed here as to what we should be doing.
So
Good one.
well, I do think we ought to ask the other committees to address the subjects that pertain to their responsibilities that were addressed by at the public hearing. And then we should get together and talk about how we want to, if we want to make any changes and convey that. Well, we never really referred it to the committee.
Well, I got a lot from education. You
Oh,
are right. The other committees didn't get theirs, but I think there's a lot
Well,
came in
Well,
education.
there are two questions, is what, you know, the various issues, and I actually distributed my outline to Sandy. We had, I guess, particularly Carol had given us a summary. But should we, either the right staff person or the right committee, be responding so that if a person from the Board of Elections gave some suggestions, should the right committee write him a letter, reach out, or alternatively, should we sort of group some things together and have a meeting on some of those subjects with it,
I think a letter could come out from the chair indicating that, heard your concern, your comment. We've discussed it and it has been deferred to X committee. I don't think it should come out from individual committees. I think it should be a central place. And I think, and are you asking me, should the central place be communications?
well, no, we had the communications committee, but there was a lot of substantive suggestions. So do we say, for example, that subject X, do I as the communications committee say the administration committee is going to deal with that issue? That's, a little narrow. And some of these issues obviously overlap. And should we alternatively say that on June 15th, we're going to have a meeting of A, B, and C who spoke about these issues and let individual commissioners come to those meetings? I mean, mechanically, we've got to be practical here.
Let me just remember, the public hearing, who made the invitation, our committee or?
The committee, I think
The invitations came from the chair and from the executive director.
So then I think that the response should be from the chair and the executive
what's the
director.
response?
I think the response should be what we've done. One, we looked at all of the written comments and verbal comments. Your issue, talk about the particular issue that I'm sorry, I'm terrible at this. Let me start all over again. Forgive me for being crazy. I'm suggesting that it come from the chair and the executive director because they initiated the invitation. Two, I think we should write a letter thanking people for their coming and for making their comments. Inform them that we have met and reviewed those comments and they've been delegated to specific committees to address. And we'll get back to them at X, within some reasonable time with a response.
Is that's good as an ideal, but is that practical? Think of all the comments that were made, and if we say to them, the education committee will get back to you on subject X.
Well, no, I mean, it was my understanding. What we're doing now is staff is going back based on the conversation that was had at the special meeting to review the comments. We're going to come up with the matrix of proposals on how to address each of those. Some of them, covered by things we are doing and been already planning to do. Other things are new. Others have been considered in the past. There's more to say about them. Certainly at the conclusion of the hearing, the chair acknowledged and thanked everyone for their contributions. So generally speaking, and I assume folks who sent in comments and who testified were paying attention. So they have that. I would think when we get to the point where we're starting to take action, that would be the time to say, thank you again for your comment. We're doing the following. I don't know that it has to be specific to a committee because it will come back to the commission. And I think we should make a point in each of our open meetings going forward of the commission to emphasize the fact that the process is moving along. So we'll have that public acknowledgement. Certainly if we have questions for individuals, we want to ask them to flesh out some of their suggestions, get clarification, we could reach out separately.
So help me. I understand I don't understand what you're saying. Are you saying that we send them a general letter, or we don't need to send them anything because we've already thanked them? But that once we've resolved it, we inform them.
Yes, exactly. But also in each of our public session meetings, make a point of, and it could be part of the operations report that staff gives as part of the open agenda, just like where we stand in the process of.
But we're sending a letter or not?
Delayed response.
Are we sending this a general letter out of thank you?
I don't think it's a delay. Well, I mean, from my perspective, it would be a real-time thing. We haven't forgotten. We were working.
I think it should be a
Just a letter kind of-
response that we heard them, we've reviewed them,
Yeah.
we deferred them, and we plan to get back to them within and we come up with an agreed upon
Yeah.
time.
I agree with you about the getting back thing, just saying we heard, because we will be doing that, but I don't think we should pigeonhole ourselves.
But I think we should be, we should hold us, we should be held accountable, we should hold ourselves accountable to committing to get it done. Not that we heard you, that we've dropped it in the trash bag.
Well, so,
I'll catch up with you.
I mean, it's getting,
I'm not saying that
And
at
every
all. I'm
meeting
saying
we say.
by sincerely and forthrightly, we are working on all of these. You know, some are good suggestions. Some may be things that are great suggestions, but they haven't worked in the past based on experience. Some will go to 6 committees, frankly, because people had lots of suggestions.
I see.
And some we already know the answer to. I wouldn't want to be disingenuous ever in a response. That would be my concern. You know, it may seem polite, but I don't want to merely be polite. I want to be self.
Being silent is not good.
Oh, no, do not want to be silent. What if they make it clear in public, in a formal meeting, each formal meeting of the commission that we are working on these.
I think we should do that, but in addition to the chair thanking the participants of the team to give comments, I think we should send a formal letter to them, advising them, reinforcing the fact that we appreciate their coming forward and that they're looking at the issues and that we will get back to them about, you know, their specific recommendations. I wouldn't pigeonhole us into a particular time frame. But I think we need to be working on it proactively on a regular basis, and we should try and get it done as quickly as possible.
So are you suggesting that sometime in the next week, we create a standard letter that would go out over Sandy and Fred's signature, saying in effect, thank you, and we will be getting back, we're looking at these issues and we will be getting back to you.
yes.
And I would agree with that, if I might chime in here, completely. I also think that it might be helpful, and I just put this out for consideration. I think a number of you have done distillations of sort of the key issues that were raised at the hearing and in written testimony that was submitted. Might be helpful if staff takes a first stab at saying just, you know, a brief sort of description of how the issue might be handled. Either one is something we've already addressed. Here's how we've addressed it. Doesn't mean that we're going to stop there, but at least we know. Or we're proposing that it go to X or Y committee, or this is one that we can address and set aside in the next couple of weeks or months, or, you know, whatever, so that we have a grid that shows either proposed action or actual action on each of those major questions that was raised. So that would be one suggestion. And then the other thing I think I might suggest is that we do consider reaching out on as needed to the people who presented and other people about sort of how to get at some of the issues that have been raised. And, we can have those people maybe present to a committee if that's necessary, or just talk to 1 or 2 commissioners to try to get some more clarity on perhaps what they were proposing, et cetera. So thank you, letter. I wholeheartedly agree. I think we should get a grid of action for the major issues that have been distilled by several commissioners from the testimony written and presented there, and then leave open the potentiality of reaching out to those presenters and others for further discussion about the issues that were raised.
So we want to be sure that what we're going to do, that we then follow through on it. And so it's easy to say, we'll write a standard letter. That's a mechanic. But then if you're going to say, I think it's agree with Fred, if we can then say, okay, we're going to take these 15 issues or whatever it is, and we're dividing them up among the various committees, is that practical? Now, do we know that then the various committees will do something? issues. I mean, after all, it's 3 weeks since we've had that meeting, right? What's happened?
Yeah, huge amount of, we had a big meeting, huge amount of analysis by staff in every division of the commission. So a huge amount of attention has been focused on those, and I think we're planning to move forward. The next step is to provide that
And the
analysis.
chair asked us to meet.
Okay, so
Jim.
you and Fred will get out a standard letter in the next week or two?
Well,
Yeah, we'll propose.
the chair is suggesting something much more detailed. He wants an analysis by each individual.
I don't think he was
I-
suggesting spoke to the people who testified. He's suggesting for our purposes.
Right.
Well, the upgrade of what we're going to do.
Is that right, Fred?
Correct. I think it's a letter, a thank you letter. It's just straightforward, thanking people for participating, to be followed by, for our internal purposes, I think Seymour is right, a grid or chart suggesting how we either have or will address each of the major issues that were raised. I think if they get referred to a committee, they don't necessarily have to, but if they do, then we're going to ask at every meeting for the committee to report out on what progress that committee's made against those items that were referred to it. And then the other piece of this would be engagement with the people who testified, as well as other stakeholders around the issues that were raised.
Some of the major issues that were raised, we may see that, hey, groups A, B, and C all spoke about these kinds of related issues. Let's have either the relevant committee or at least a cross-section of commissioners have another meeting with them to hear that in more detail.
Indeed, yeah.
That's,
Yeah, well, I will say the grant and the accompanying analysis is already underway on the schedule that was agreed upon at the special meeting
and
on April 10th.
related to this, should we have or should we just postpone thinking about a potential second meeting this year? Let's just think the next year. Some reference, not sure it's necessary, I'm just asking you, or leave that open for the moment.
This calendar year.
Yeah. Not advocating, I'm asking,
To think
If I could jump in on that one, I think the roundtable might be more beneficial that we just talked about than having a second public hearing to build upon what we heard and picking, or not picking, but like if there's additional people we know who couldn't make it to the public hearing that want to, talk about things, we can invite them to the roundtable.
Let me just ask a question. Fred, at the last meeting, we had the debriefing meeting, you pitched some things to the education committee, several of those questions. Are those the questions you want us to deal with, or now we should wait for staff to come back with their?
No, I think if we've already agreed that a committee would address an issue, that committee should proceed to address that issue. And that should go on the grid.
and I have an overarching question is to the extent the suggestions are legislative in nature, that's many of them are. Does that take a different analysis because whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, we need legislative action? Do we approach that in a different way?
Right.
Because
What were you thinking, Michael?
well, we're not going to be able to take as prompt action on it, change the method of selection, which a number of people suggested, or prohibit, require people running for office to file more detail. Kinds of things that need legislation. We can't do, we can put that on our potential legislative agenda. But not much point in spending too much time on those as
Correct.
distinct.
Yeah, so maybe we could compile all of those things in one place that need legislative action. And then, to your point, maybe Michael, have a special sort of grid for that to say, these are the things that we think we can address this legislative session. This is what we think will have to be delayed to future sessions. Here's where we think we need more information, et cetera. So, so again, get a distillation of those and then a plan of action for each one.
Okay, so I think we'll get the letter out, and the staff is working hard on creating the grid, if I can use that phrase, and we can revisit this in a couple of weeks. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, yes. Well, a couple of weeks. I think the schedule was June, but we're doing it as expeditiously as possible. And a good deal of the analysis, you know, was being done real time as the comments were coming in even before the hearing. So we have a good feel.
Now, related to that is what lessons have we learned to change the way we're going to handle the public meeting next year? Other than picking out a better date, I think, because of the whatever holidays or whatever. And how do we generate a greater audience? And should the time limits that we had imposed be more flexible or same, something in between?
So I think we ought to look at what the time limits. We should probably set the time limit after we identify how many people want to speak. And then advise them what that time limit would be. I think it was unfortunate. We gave them 5 minutes and we really didn't have that many
Speakers, that's
people
right.
who came to give testimony. So certainly we could have given them 10 minutes. But we learned from this experience. And I mean, I was participating in a public hearing for another group that gave people 5 minutes, but 5 minutes and it went all day. So depending on how many people we have, I think we ought to use that to guide us in how long we should. Well, if we only had 6 people, I don't think we should give them half an hour each.
Right.
And should the meeting be scheduled for a whole day? We don't have to decide, we don't have to decide that now.
That would be dependent on, right, the number of people who want to participate. Yeah, so.
Okay. And I think we should probably schedule a more specific meeting of the commission 2 weeks after we had that meeting, but you know, whether or not, once we pick the date, we should roughly 2 weeks later have a follow-up. Okay. Any other issues? Andy, could you hold my sand?
Yeah, what I'd suggest is we go into executive session. If there's a.
Oh, yeah, right, all right.
To
Right,
do
we'll take a
that,
break.
so-
Right, okay. Any other thoughts about the steps to take either right away in response to the public meeting or long-term proposals?
I don't think that we can handle this now, or respond to this now. But I understand the complexity of what I'm about to suggest. But there's got to be a way that we can better communicate with public while we're there. I didn't like the idea of being silent the whole time. But yet, though, I also understand, you know, the potential of it being problematic. I hope that we have a chance to at least discuss it at some point, trying to figure out a compromise.
Need to have an interchange.
I think by, if we don't do it in this calendar year, we do it next year, let's say, we're going to be much further along on all of the issues that were raised, I hope. And then we maybe could have committees at the public meeting or designate to speak on certain issues or respond. I think that might be a good way to handle it. So it's still a united message, and it's a message that the commission has approved, and then designating people to address if there's a direct question, like there were some direct questions that no one answered. So I think maybe something like that could be helpful. And that, then each person could focus. Hi, Fred. each person can focus on the exact, on a certain topic and be prepared to talk about that as little or as in-depth as necessary, depending on the question. So I do like the idea of participation, even though, I just saw it.
And at the upcoming meeting next week, I guess I should, when the communications committee is called upon, I'll just bring people up to date. We just discussed. Is that a fair way to put it? Looks like you moved, Fred. It's a much nicer background now.
Yeah, it's fake. It's a virtual background provided by WebEx.
Oh, you see, the thing. It's very good. Yeah.
I suggest now that we move into executive session to discuss the next item on the agenda. Do we have a motion to do so? Seymour?
Mr. Chair, may I just ask a quick question of Sandy? Do I need a special designation to be able to go in executive session virtually with the committee?
You do pursuant to 103A of the Public Officers Law for extraordinary circumstances.
Thank you. Just wanted to make that public.
Do you agree with that amendment to the resolution? All those in favor of the resolution? Any opposed? Go into executive session.
All right, we just need to go
So
off straight.
let's take a quick break while we get Michael Sand to join us.
Let's just wait till we're off.
Right, thank you. So Media Services Center, we can go into executive session now. And turn off the live stream. Thank you.
Thank you. Our executive session concluded. I can advise that we had confidential discussions with respect to some legislative related issues. And really, that's all I need to say. Anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, it was a discussion with council involving in particular questions of statutory interpretation and application as affects the commission and its operations.
Okay. Now that we're back in session, anyone want to raise any other issues before the committee at this time? Not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Ready to move? Seymour seconds. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you all very, very much. And I will see you all on Monday or Tuesday.
Thank you all. Have a good weekend.
Okay, we can cut the live stream now.
Meeting. Is it 79 degrees out?
It was pretty warm when I came in.
Wow.
Oh, that's probably, is that here or over?
Albany is 79 degrees?
It was warmer inland.